Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next episode of CAOverwatch. As always,
work, but the Toronto Defiant will not be denied.
hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very, very, very special episode of CAOverwatch. As you guys can tell from the thumbnail, the title, and the screen you're currently looking at, we have the stat stud himself, Barroi, joining the show with us. Came on the show earlier last year, friend of the show, so it's great to have him back. And yeah, we have some community questions that you guys have submitted to us that we're going to ask, as well as just get his overall thoughts on the roster that the Toronto Defiant has put together so far. So with that out of the way, I'm one of your hosts, Spencer. With me is Chris. Chris, Barroi, how's it going?
It's going well.
Yeah, pretty good too. A long day at the office, but this is just as refreshing as it could be. And I don't think we could have brought Barroi in or Dennis at a better time and a more exciting time in Toronto Defiant's 2021 roster history. Hopefully this history lasts longer than our previous rosters.
Knock on wood. Knock on wood.
It's not a high bar to beat, but it's definitely exciting. So Barroi, hey, long day for you too. How have you guys been doing with it? You guys are almost at the end of your roster makeup. Are you feeling exhausted yet? Are you ready to be done with this roster build?
Well, in the last few weeks, it's gotten less and less work, right? Because we got it all together somehow. Because at the start of offseason, even though it's called the offseason, it's so much work actually. It's really tough because you're doing trials and we did trials in 2 regions because we did in Korea and in AU combined. So it was just a lot of work, but towards the end now it became less and less, and I needed kind of a break. But now it kind of feels like boring almost because there's nothing really going on right now.
Yeah.
So can't wait for next year to start and just to
Ask
start
for a budget increase. Be like, hey, Adam, can we get a little more budget so I can get
just sign more players, right? We've already got a roster. We want like a few more just so Barroi can
just freaking trial.
Yeah, exactly.
Trial.
Just so you have something to do.
I don't even want to pick them up. Let's just try. That's pretty sweet. So hey, I mean, one of the big things, I guess, from your perspective, just so we can close this out and focus on the future. In a couple lines, what are your kind of final thoughts on 2019 and moving forward?
2020?
Yeah, 2019-2020 season, the one that season 3,
okay.
if you will.
Season 3, yeah.
Season 3, yeah.
I can comment on 2019 as well. That's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, last season, huh? The best word to describe last season is, I think, chaos. Chaos. It's been chaos in like so many different ways that like obviously couldn't be expected. Had fucking head coach retire or GM retire.
Yeah.
COVID hit. I broke my foot one day in Toronto. Like the first day I came here, I broke my foot. So
how did you break your foot?
I went rock climbing and I fell awkwardly. So I broke my foot on the first day I came here, and then I was hinking to work and shit. It was fun.
Wow, that sucks.
It was snowing as well because it was in January, right? So 2020, it was the 3rd of January when I flew in, and on the 4th of January, not even 24 hours later, I broke my foot. I had to go to the hospital and get like crutches and all of that shit.
Oh my God.
That was a good start. That was a fun start to the year.
That's crazy too, because I'm sure, like, for people who don't know, yeah, I was gonna say there's no mountains in Toronto. So I'm sure this is one of those just like the indoor mountain climbing facilities.
Yes. I just fell really awkwardly on one of the mats. It's the stupidest fucking way to break a foot. So, but this is how 2020 started. Then obviously,
kind of how
all
it
the
ended
COVID.
Too.
Yeah, kind of. And then it just became chaos, really. I think for us, we had the really nice bootcamp in Korea in 2019, and we started the season very confident.
Yeah.
And I think we were close to like getting some very nice victories. Obviously, we had a very close game against Philly, which was unfortunately not going into our favor.
Yeah.
but it was like a nice start to the season, and then it just after like 4 or 5 weeks, it kind of all fell apart, and then just issues began to surface, and people retiring left and right, and then we were just in this unstable state until basically the end, which didn't help.
Yeah.
So chaos, just chaos.
Because I just remember, like, it was interesting because you came on our show right before the Philly game and you actually predicted, hey, I'm not going to guarantee a win or anything, but you said it was going to be closer than a lot of people were predicting. And, that's exactly what happened. And it was kind of unfortunate because the team did start off, with a win over Paris. Yes. And I know Paris didn't have Hanbin or Sparkle, but they still had a lot of good pieces there. A really close game where Philly, and I think a lot of people are like, okay, might not be a championship team like the Shock, but this looks like a very competitive team. And in some ways, I still think it was. Yes. I think a lot of people look at the Toronto Defiant as like one of the worst teams in the league. And I actually don't agree with that. Obviously, you got to get the wins. But I do think of all the teams that maybe didn't get wins, we came closer than all of them. Like there was so many games where it was like 3-2 final map or like a really, really close 3-1. And I felt like this team was better than a lot of people give it credit for. But
I think one way to see this is like if you actually look at all the teams that made like top 4 in one of those like monthly tournaments, I think we are the only team in like the bottom half of the league who made it.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, which makes
sense.
So,
Definitely good.
So you can see that there is potential, but we weren't stable enough to see through and get to that like continuously.
Yeah, and it's just so weird that because I remember like one of the biggest parts about going into this season was sort of about like how unstable season 1 was and how you guys seem to like flip the script, right? The whole point was like we want to
drive that knife in deeper, Spencer.
Yeah, we had a stable roster, like, and it's just interesting to see that just seemingly, I guess you just never know with these sports, or I don't really know what happened there. I just thought it was interesting. That was a narrative that was being pushed at the beginning of season 2 and seemingly
it was the same thing in season 2 basically. We were unstable. Like we started off well and then it was unstable. Until the end, and the same thing happened again. So it's just like now it's about just making a stable team and
exactly.
making sure that things work out and hopefully learning from all the shit that went down in the last 2 years. Not just as like not just for me like as a coach, but like as an organization as well. Just to try to learn from it and counteract it before things happen. Just see what the issues could be and like try to figure out what you can do to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Very smart. And I guess kind of, on that note, you're exiting 2020, and I hope we all exit from our brains and erase that memory. What were your guys', I guess even before you got KDG, what were your guys' initial plan going into 2020? Did you guys really not have any plan until KDG, oh my gosh, came on? Yeah. Or were you guys already in kind of formulation of a new strategy?
Well, before KDG came on, the obvious the message was that we are looking for a head coach, and the head coach, once he comes in, will dictate like everything. He will get full control and stuff, but we didn't want to let other teams get ahead of us in terms of scouting. So we did a lot of scouting before we actually signed a head coach, so we can at least give some feedback of who we think, and we basically meaning Glitch and me, meaning like giving scouting information about who we think would be valuable to pick up in both from both the Western side and the Korean side. And because of that, as I said earlier, it was a lot of work, but hopefully it helped out in making some decisions along the way.
Yeah, and I guess I was sort of just trying to get to like the philosophy of it all, right? Was this a team that when the offseason started, were you guys like, hey, we're going to build a super team, right? This is going to be, what, like, look at the Dallas feel, right? Was that sort of your initial plan, and then maybe some players went some places that you didn't think they're going to go and then you try to pivot? Or was your plan always, hey, let's just try to, go this 2-year plan from the very beginning. We want to start young. We want to build some developing talent, right? Like you guys have picked up Aztec and Unsin J, for instance. Or was this sort of like you're doing your trials, you're like, holy shit, this Unsen J and Aztec guy are phenomenal. Like, we don't need to spend X amount of money on whoever was out there, right? And this is the direction that we could take. Like, I kind of just want to hear, I think, the philosophy is started and then sort of
Okay, normally how it goes is the org gives you a budget, and then you work with that budget. And the org also gives you kind of a philosophy on what they think they want to do, and based on that, they also hire a head coach, right?
Yes.
They don't just pick like a head coach because of something. They have like tons of candidates, and then they see this head coach works best with our philosophy as like an organization, and that's why we want to pick him. And the message obviously is always to build the best team possible that you can with the money you have.
Yeah.
But also the org really wants to get to become like a really good team in the next few years, and that means that they are not shying away from taking young talent and trying to develop them and trying to keep them in the same organization for multiple years, and try to have them on here in 2022 and maybe beyond, and just try to improve as we go. That was basically that is the philosophy that we got from higher up and that we built around.
Interesting.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's good that you guys gave some insight into that sort of process, because I don't think most people know like exactly how that process works. But just to pivot.
Well, normally,
sorry.
So yeah, normally it's basically you can't just make up your own budget, right? The organization has the money, so they give you the money. They give you the budget. Yeah, unfortunately, but still, you're obviously trying to look for players that you think would work best with your team. Try to look for like star players, and there were some that we got and some that we didn't get. So it's the same for every team basically. You can't expect everything to go perfectly. That's why you have a plan B and plan C and plan D and plan E and so on and so on.
Any chance you want to leak some of those superstar players you wanted but didn't end up getting, or
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Yeah, that's okay, because speaking of leaks,
we were really close. We were really close to some of them. But, I'm not gonna say.
Damn, maybe one day we'll find out and we'll get to see which players we're really close to. Because I mean, the team. It was just funny that when the team came out, I remember being like, "We want to win. We want top 5." And I felt like it sort of transitioned to a 2-year plan. And I mean, I don't know like what happened, but I do wonder. Like, I always wanted to know what happened. Like, be a fly on the wall in some of those meetings. But speaking of leaks, I thought this was a pretty good segue. You got some beef going on here, Barroi. So I mean, we had you on, and I couldn't have you on and not at least bring it up. But you got yourself and Halo of Thoughts on Twitter kind of going back and forth. So I wanted to hear your opinion on sort of, what's up with that, but also just your opinion maybe on the whole leaks and like the anonymous Twitter accounts and all that sort of stuff in general.
So first of all, I don't really follow much social media, and I'm not really using social media much. So what I have to do for myself to stay relevant is create drama at least once a year, right? And I thought that was a perfect way to create drama. It worked.
Yeah.
So actually, I really enjoyed that back and forth with Halo. I didn't really do much back and forth. It was just him like commenting like back to me multiple times. But I enjoyed his responses. I thought they were pretty funny.
Yeah.
But to talk on the whole leak thing, I think it's totally fine. I just think that the reason why I made that comment on Twitter is because I worked in journalism a little bit in esports, right? And it always feels like to me that that Halo basically is like presents himself as a journalist, but then the way he reports and the way he works is very different from how most journalists in the esports scene behave, because the expectations that he puts on himself are much lower than most other journalists in the scenes act. Because if you look at like people like what are they? Richard Lewis or DK in CS:GO.
Yeah.
All of
Even
those
Yiska,
people,
right, has recently started
even
reporting
Yiska,
on.
all those people who leak stuff or who report on roster moves. Another one is Jacob Wolf from ESPN formerly.
Yeah.
All those people make sure that they have a 100% success rate because it affects their reputation as a journalist. And Halo never really put that same expectation on himself.
Yeah.
And I think that hurts Overwatch a little bit as like an esports scene because we don't really have this kind of journalist right now where we have someone who's like doing a lot of those roster reports, but they're also like extremely accurate. 100% rate is different from whatever Halo has with its 95% or whatever. I'm not sure. He has a very good success rate, but it's not the same. I feel like, to me, it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah. I kind of know what you mean in terms of like I personally have no problems with the leak, and I do think that like Halo, is obviously he's right a lot more than he's wrong, and I feel like a lot of the community, and not you specifically, but there's like random people on Twitter who just like shit on him because he got like one thing or two things wrong, and they're like, oh, how could you? I'm like, yeah, okay, but like, like that's.
I think it's unfortunate for him as well because I feel like it hurts his own reputation, and I don't know if he really wants to pursue like any journalistic career in esports, but I think if he continues doing what he's doing, then he won't really get many opportunities because his self expectations are comparatively low, which I think would hurt him to pursue his own career in esports, which I don't know if he wants that, but if he wants that, then he probably needs to up himself a little bit more, and I think he could. Like you see how many things he reports on, so he does have connections.
He has connections.
So he definitely could have a fucking career.
Yeah.
If he really wanted to, and it requires a lot of hard work, and he already probably puts in a lot of work, but he probably would need to be a little bit more thorough in his accuracy and checking of people. But yeah, I personally have no issue with leaks and all. I think some organizations have because they feel like things are taken away from them, but I honestly, I don't care.
Yeah, like, in my opinion, I'm like, first of all, that's just the way it works in like every other traditional sports league ever, right? And even a lot of other separate esports. Like, it's one thing if it's like a business transaction, then I start to get it a little bit more. Like, Hector's been on talking about the Optic deal, and you look at something like, oh, the Overwatch League has been postponed until April 30th. That was another leak. I could see how something like that might have some more implications, but like, if someone's been signed, someone's been signed, right?
Well, it doesn't matter. Like, it's also that like people assume that because there's like rumors, teams won't pursue the same person anymore because someone says Valentine is being traded to Houston or whatever.
Yeah.
Then no one talks to Valentine. But that, like,
what?
Twitter is not our source of information.
Yeah,
that's not how it works.
That's exactly how I feel.
We can literally go and talk to the player. Like, we don't have to look on Twitter and see what like people think would happen.
Yeah, I have that exact same. Someone's like, "Oh, Halo, how could you report on the Dante situation?" Now Houston's not going to talk to. I'm like, "Bro, like what?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, they're going to sign him if they want to sign him. Like, the fact that, like, the public, they're not going to wait to see what some random person on Twitter has to say before they make their decision.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes Halo's gotten too much crap for that, too. Like, I like learning about this stuff. I actually sometimes wish there was more. Like, how many times in the NHL and NBA do you hear, like, this team is interested in this player, and then nothing ever happens? Right? Like, we didn't even get that. Like, this person's looking into this trade, and then nothing ever happens, right? Like, Elliot Freeman does a 30 on 30 on NHL every week, and like almost none of them come to fruition. But I still like to hear those like sort of thought process of the teams of who they are interested in, and you know what I mean. Like, so, I mean, I like it, but I do agree that there's like, if he wants to become like the Woj, for instance, or like like Wolf or ESPN, that there is a little bit more of a professional way to take it. And I think like Yiska's done a really good job at doing that, and I think he's even started doing that too, where he's now reaching out to orgs, for comments. So I think it's interesting. I just wanted to hear you guys. I just want to hear your thoughts because I just got a big kick out of that. I love the drama. I love the spice.
No, I just wanted some drama. I thought I'd take a kick at Halo this time.
Hey, No problem by us.
Nothing against him personally. Not
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. No.
Hope he's gonna
Except
do
his
well.
journalistic abilities.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, next into kind of more of the stuff
I
that
like it.
I think good to have your opinion, Spencer. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, okay, so hey, let's go through a roster breakdown. I want to go through some of the pickups we've got, give a brief kind of reason why I picked them up, why I like them. Let's start with the tank line. Beast and Michelle.
And
So Shadow.
yeah, I was gonna say
Beast and Michelle, not Shadow. But Beast and Michelle more interestingly, because
I agree.
I mean, Beast, we like him. A lot of people have talked smack. Michelle, we
I like
haven't
Beast.
seen a lot of playtime. Why do you pick them up?
Beast is a very high potential player.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, like it's something that I realized like early on last season, and unfortunately we didn't get to tap that potential last year. And I think KDG has the same thought process of like him being a very high potential player,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just about how much can we teach him so that he can be more of what we need him to be. And I'm not exactly sure where it will all fit in with the new roster, but something that he was lacking last season, for example, was leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you can't teach someone immediately. It's something that comes over time. And part of him being recruited is that we want to teach him and we want to see if we can develop him and if we can make him into a better leader and a better tank player for that matter. Obviously we'll see where exactly he will have to fill holes with Sado. We see if like only one of them plays all the time, or if it's going to be both, like one on Vine, one on Winston, or something like that. We'll figure that all out in the boot camp.
Yeah.
But we have definitely hopes for Beast to be able to step into some games.
Yeah.
Now.
Well,
Because like I always thought Beast was a good player.
Yes.
He always did impress me mechanically, and I think that the decision making and the leadership you did sort of see throughout. Sometimes he maybe overextended, or you'd think he should have went somewhere. We went somewhere else. But it was nice, and I'm sure like it's also not just like, and I think this was a lot of the community doesn't recognize. It's not just like you guys saw his performance last year and just immediately handed him an extension, right? Like as far as I know, he was let go. Right, like his contract not ended, but like he got the goodbye tweet and everything, and then I'm assuming went through the trials that you guys had sort of set up, and once again continued to impress to the point where KDG was like, okay, yeah, like not only does he have like the reputation, I'm sure like you talked highly of him, former like whatever people used to play with talk highly of him, teammates like Logix for instance spoke highly of him, but you also get to see that in the trials themselves. And so am I like accurate in suggesting that like it wasn't just like, oh yeah, well here look at him last year.
He didn't get an immediate extension. Obviously he twirled with other teams as well, and he didn't twirl much with us because we know him. So
interesting. Okay.
KDG knows him too. But the thing is that I think there's Beast has like a lot of strengths, and it's just about like tapping into those strengths and getting the potential. Something that Beast is extremely good at, and that might sound dumb, but it's just making friends quickly, and that's something that like
interesting.
It's something that's extremely important, honestly, in esports, or at least in Overwatch, because most of the players are very introverted and it's very hard to kind of connect to them. And something that's very important is to create team culture where people feel connected and where people feel like a team, right? It's about building a team. There's a good book which is by like a sports journalist, and it's called Getting to Us. And getting to us as in us, the team. So it's about from getting to just me as a player to getting to us and thinking about the whole thing, not just about the team. And Beast has this insane skill where he can just become friends very quickly, which is something that is very valuable
Yeah.
if you think about it, because you want to create a team culture where people are thinking of themselves as part of the whole thing and not just as individuals. And if we can just develop him a bit more as a player, mechanically, or like in terms of leadership or whatever you need as like a main tank to be successful in whatever matter, then I think he would be, in combination with this natural ability, would be extremely valuable as a player for the next few years, honestly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like him. I think he's a good player, and I think he's got some potential. It's nice to see him on this roster. And another player, and I also think that again, like you have Sato, so we get to Sato in a moment, but it's not like he was your only option like he was last year. Like you could, like you said, you could run it where Sato just plays and maybe Beast plays the ball, for instance, or he only plays if it's a double main tank meta, right? Like there's options there. Now Michelle, a little bit of a different story. As far as I know, he's the only off tank on the roster. Might be the only tank on the roster when the season starts, and it gives me like a little bit reminiscent of maybe like Nevix, although not to the same degree, right? Where there's some unknown quantity to him because we didn't really get to see him play last year. And, I've heard some good things about him, and we did get to see him in Season 2 where he impressed, but some of that was also his ability to play Sombra, which is obviously not as useful in a meta like this. So why did you guys feel so confident in a person like Michelle to essentially sign him as, again, it could change, but at this point, you're only off tank?
Well, the thing is about every player we recruit, there's going to be a lot of background checks with like
For sure.
with like other players who they played with like coaches, with basically everyone who knows this person. And it's not just about like how good is he. It's about like how much motivation does he have? How much drive does he have? How much of a teammate is he? Like, can he connect to other people easily? Is he like a sheltered child? Is he like extremely extroverted and maybe too much so? Like, what kind of person is that? And Michelle, just as a package, made sense to us because he might not be on the radar of everyone as like this superstar player, but there are those like superstar players from other teams who became free agents where we thought they have issues that are too big of a risk to go after, and because of that, Michelle actually makes more sense to pursue, which is, again, it's extremely hard to see from the outside, but if you do research and if you actually talk about players with other coaches and with teammates and stuff, then it's easier to see what kind of personality he has. And as a package, Michelle actually made a lot of sense to us, and enough sense to sign him to the roster.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I do know some people, again, in the Discord and stuff, you heard names like Fury going around and John going around, and even like Meko going around. And well, I do think Fury would have been a really good person to pick up. But I think you could argue that maybe somebody like Michelle has a little bit more upside than a John, for instance, given the flexibility, right? Maybe on D.Va specifically, maybe not, but like I don't know if hero pools are going to be a thing, but I think the assumption is they will be. Overwatch 2 could be a thing, so you might need to learn more than one hero. Like these are all things that like somebody like Michelle and his flexibility, I think could come into play. And even if it's not Overwatch 2 and it's just hero pools, right? Like still valuable, right? To have somebody who can play Sigma, D.Va, Zarya, Hog. So yeah, that's
with every player you pick up, there's gonna be a risk. Like the thing is, there's always gonna be a risk. If it's like a player like Michelle that is maybe not as well recognized, then maybe the risk is that we overestimate him and that he is not as good mechanically as we thought. But maybe if we get like a superstar player like Janu or Meko or Fury or whatever, then maybe the risk is that we overestimate and that we are actually like spending a lot of money on him. But actually, if we had done our research, then we would have found out that there's like a lot of problems with those people. And I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying that there's always a risk, no matter what you go for. And from our perspective, the best like risk reward value that we saw in the players that were available and are open to coming to Toronto, Michelle had the best like overall package.
Awesome, interesting. That's I'm sure that puts a lot of people's worries at ease. I know it helps with mine because he's a bit of a question mark I have going into the year. Although I am excited to see what he can do.
Yeah.
Obviously, pretty quickly. I don't know how much you have to say, but just Sato. I think that was one of the biggest, if not your biggest, signing of the offseason. How excited are you to get a chance to work with a player like that?
I'm extremely excited. Like, okay, something that people don't know is before season 1 started, I was working with like a lot of teams, because I was having my own company, Winston's Lab, back in the day, and I was working with basically like half of the Overwatch League, and did like a lot of preseason scouting and all of that. And Sado was one of those players who he didn't go as Sado back then, but he was one of those players who was extremely outstanding in like almost every regard as a tank player. I was like, who is this guy? I have never heard of him. And back then it's called Myunbong. That's the name he went after in those trials that I saw.
Yeah.
And later on, he obviously didn't get signed in season 1.
Yeah.
I tried to get him signed, but obviously I wasn't directly involved in the team, so I didn't have any not big influence or anything at all. But later on, obviously Sado came into the league, and I found out that in the Overwatch League database he goes as Myunbong. So I was like, oh shit, okay, now it all makes sense.
Yeah, so
I like pre-season 1, I already thought this is probably like one of the best tank players in the world, or he could be potentially. And so having a person like this on the team, and obviously it's now 4 years later, but it's still very exciting.
Yeah, well, it's not like he's lost a step right after the season he just had. I think most people would consider him in that upper echelon of main tank. So I'm super excited to. You could argue, I don't want to go too much, but it's nice to see that we've sort of had this like rock solid, well established, knock on wood, main tank, which I think has been a position that we've been a little bit riskier in the past. So moving on to the DPS, obviously, we brought Logix back. I was also a fan of this move, not just from a mechanical standpoint, because I think he's mechanically very good, but I just like him. I think he's a good person. I think the fans like him. I like the cohesion.
The man's sweet.
Yeah.
He has great streams. Like I can imagine he's probably a beast. He's like extroverted and just like cool and like makes.
He's not very extroverted, but he's very comfortable to be around. Like when we did our exit interviews with all the players, we asked one question, and that was like, which teammate helped you out the most during the season? And it was not necessarily like in the game or something, it was like also out of the game. And the person that came up most by far was Logix. He was the person who just connects well with teammates, and he creates an atmosphere where you can be friends with him very easily, and he is just comfortable to be around for everyone. And obviously he has talent in the game, so
for sure. That's what I like. He also really it's kind of a two-part question, but I think he also fills out Hisu, for instance, like almost perfectly. Given that, like, you could argue his weaknesses are maybe the Sombra, for instance, right, and some of those other heroes, whereas Hisu maybe isn't the greatest tracer in the world. And his Widowmaker looked good by the end of the year, but there's definitely moments where that didn't look as elite, whereas like that's like Logix's specialty. So what was some of the thought process that went first to like Logix, other than him, the fact that he's an amazing teammate and sort of a great player, and just to put this like sort of thing to bed, even though I think we sort of already have. Like, this was also, KDG was on board at the time where the Logix decision was made. Am I correct in suggesting that, or is that also maybe not the case that he was re-signed before that?
I don't exactly remember the timeline, but he probably was.
No problem.
Yeah, I don't actually remember the timeline, but Logix just has like a lot of good upsides. Obviously, he has downsides. Everyone has, but there's just so much to say that's good about him, and obviously, it makes sense to have somehow at least like a few players from the last season. So the fans don't get like all weirded out because it's a completely new team all the time.
No, I agree.
So he carries over like as like our Toronto Defiant player now. He's the
only one.
He's like the franchise player. Yeah.
From season 1, he's the only one to have played in all 3 seasons. Yeah.
Okay, well, to add on to that, and this kind of goes as a general question too. Do you see communication being an issue between like Beast and Logix and the rest of the team?
Obviously there's gonna be issues because it's going to be Korean and English. They're two English-speaking players. So it's not gonna be 100% easy, but that's also why the main bulk of the team is Korean, and then we have at least Logix and Beast who were kind of in situations where they were with Korean players before, so they are not new to all of this. They can relate to Korean culture a lot easier. It's a lot easier for them to become friends and like not be outcasts of that whole thing, because both of them have history with like Korean teammates and majority Korean teams. And still, there might be communication issues, but that's always the case. Even if you just speak Korean, even if you just speak English, there's always communication issues.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the upsides we got from the personalities and from the people and players we got are outweighing the issues that we will get through communication. It's always going to be a balanced thing, right?
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
And you
Go
go,
on,
Chris.
sorry.
I was going to ask what he's do, but if that's what you're going to ask, you can frame it.
Yeah, no, you can ask what he
I
says.
was just saying, because that's a good point about Logix. I think Logix is great. I think fans sometimes underestimate how important it is for the general fan base to have people who they can follow throughout seasons. And not only that, but I think Logix just has really great talent. I do think he can be a really above average Widowmaker and Tracer in this league. And that's something that I do think Hisu, for instance, maybe lacks. Less Widowmaker, a little bit more Tracer. What about Hisu, man? He's someone who I might be more excited than Sato. I know the big ticket is Sato, but I loved the Hisu pickup. Like, I was like, this is fucking perfect. Because I do think he's one of the best Sombras in the league, if not the best. And I also think he's extremely young, ton of upside. How excited are you for having a player like that on?
Obviously, we want to have two hit scans because two hit scans is something that's going to be very necessary in most matters in Overwatch. So we definitely wanted the second hit scan player, and being fortunate enough to get Hisu, and obviously most of this is all credit to KDG because in the end he makes the decisions and he's the one who has to convince players and stuff to come here.
Yeah.
So I'm extremely excited about that. I remember in at season 2 we were watching Korean contenders with all our players, and back then Moby was on the team, and I remember we were just screaming Hisu at some point because he was playing for Runaway, and so it was funny that Moby then later on went to Philadelphia. And Hisu came there as well. So I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah, you're like, son of a bitch.
But yeah, now he's following KDG here, so that's very exciting. I think we are very well set up in terms of our hit scan players, and we'll just have to exactly figure out where we want to slot in which guy and how it makes sense for like communication wise and also hero pool wise.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Very quickly, I know there's a whole. Unfortunately, I was hoping the Flex DPS player would be announced before this episode happened. It hasn't been. I know I expect you to delete the player, but is there any sort of insight you can give to the fans about maybe your thought process going in? I know some fans really wanted like an Ivy, for instance, and unfortunately that didn't work out, and he's going to New York. Any sort of thoughts, little tidbits you can give us about how you sort of plan on like rounding out this DPS lineup?
So one thing that's really interesting about Flex DPS. Oh, first of all, obviously, as I said before, we're doing our diligence on every player we recruit. So
for sure,
this is something that's in the process right now, where we're just checking on everyone and seeing if they fit in the budget, like what kind of expectations they have, what expectations we have, if they're even open to come to Toronto or not.
Yeah.
And then based on that, we are hopefully making a decision very soon. But something that is very interesting about Flex DPS is that like at the start of the off season, something that you could have seen is that there are, let me count real quick. There are 9 Korean contenders players that are 18 or 19. There's 7 players who just will turn 18 for 2021
Yeah.
From Korean contenders. So there's a lot of talent
Mm-hmm.
from Flex DPS, which just makes it so much harder to pick from, and obviously then all the Overwatch League talent as well that comes into it. Some people being let go from other teams, and all of that combined there's a huge talent pool available. So basically, it's almost like there will be players who are better and players who are worse, but almost like you can be guaranteed someone who's at least decent, no matter what you do. And that's something that's to me, for like from like an outside perspective, it's very interesting to see who of those 9 contenders players and 2 of those Overwatch League players and all of them combined will make the cut in the end. Like who's actually going to stand aside and who's not making it. Are there like maybe some star players who will not make it into the league for season 4?
Yeah.
That's like a big question, and I think it's going to be exciting to see. And obviously, hopefully, we'll have a good player for our roster as well.
Yeah. Okay, so just to clarify, so nothing has been set in stone yet, but you're still hoping to figure it out pretty soon. Okay, that's good. So
yes,
some
I'm
leaks
pretty confident that we are having something to announce. Maybe this week, but probably next week.
Knock on wood. Okay, hopefully.
Knock on wood. Support now. Asun J and Aztec. What are your thoughts on that? Tell me.
Because I have no idea
Maybe
about
Green
this
Sport Line.
I watched the VODs on the most recent Korean Contenders finals, and then I reached out to the casters. They were nice enough to sort of reach back, but that's about as far as my knowledge goes.
Ansunje is like, when we tried Korean supports, we very quickly figured out that Ansunje is probably like the best contenders player to pick up if we want to pick up a contenders player for the main support role from Korea, because he was just very outstanding and like not just mechanically but also in other than like most of the Korean players. Actually, Korean. Yeah.
So I was gonna say, you just cut out there for a second. You said he was outstanding in communication, just to clarify.
Outstanding in communication, yes, and mechanically, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
Because something that's interesting in Korean teams compared to Western teams is that normally Western teams are led by the main tank.
Yep.
And then main supports are just there for like maybe general strategy and obviously
ult tracking.
Ult tracking. And Korean teams work very differently, where there is not like a set in stone leader. It doesn't have to main tank all the time. It can be basically anyone. Yeah. There's like some flex DPS players who are just very leading, and some main supports who are very leading. And for us, Ansunje is someone who basically has the potential and knows how to communicate about it, and has a skill mechanically to be a main support player that we would like on the team. And in the end, it turned out that we actually did pick him up, and we actually got him from Element Mystic. So
that's awesome.
I'm very excited to see. Obviously, with like contenders players, there's always, as I said before, there's always risks and always
exactly.
We always have to see, because the one big risk that you have with contenders players is they've never been in the league.
Yeah.
So you don't know how will they react under pressure. Like, will it get to them that they'll be in Canada and not in Korea? Like,
yeah.
What will it be like for them? And like, will they completely crumble? Are they able to connect with new teammates easily because they're all young people? Like, what will this new situation do to them where they earn a lot of money? Like, there's a lot of things that go into this where you're like, okay, it's probably safer to just go with an Overwatch League player, but the risk comes with the reward, and
exactly.
We'll have to see how much sense it makes. Obviously, we did our diligence, did research, and hopefully it will work out well for us.
And another interesting thing that some people, I mean, I heard names like Faith being thrown around of names that they wanted, and I thought a benefit that Anson J had maybe over someone like maybe him specifically is when I watched their game, the one game, play against each other. I know that both played both the Brig and the Lucio, but whenever they played the Mercy, Faith was actually subbed out. And I do think that given hero pools, it might be really important for the main support to be able to play Brig as well as Lucio and Mercy, because you never know what the meta is going to be. And so my sort of, again, very quick analysis was maybe just like J has like a bit of a wider hero pool / a little bit more flexibility.
So one thing you'll have to keep in mind for 2021 is it's going to be a different season in terms of not just rosters for teams, but also in terms of contracts, because I'm not sure if you covered this, but what was made public is that contracts for 2021 work differently for players. Now teams can actually fire players if they put that into their contracts and get someone during the season. No, you obviously don't want to do that because it destroys team culture. But you can have someone let go for like the minimum is a 30-day buyout, which means you pay them 30 days of their salary and then they're out. That's basically the buyout fee for their contract. So you can basically fire them by paying them 30 days of their salary or whatever you put in the contract. You can also give them a yearly guarantee still. But because of that, there's a lot of downsizing in the league, and like a lot of teams actually have less spots for players open. They have a smaller budget because of, and because of all this, you kind of want someone in every role that is very flexible. And what you said earlier probably also is true for the main support. We want someone who is flexible, and I'm not saying that that we picked Ansunje just because of that.
For sure.
Because that's not true.
Yep.
But it is something to keep in mind all the time, because there is a lot of downsizing. There's a lot of budget cuts throughout the whole league.
Yeah.
And you want someone who's flexible in basically every role, just to create something that's stable for the whole year.
Yeah, unless you're the Shock, of course, then you just fucking get everybody. So fair enough.
That's ideal scenario.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, though. It's a good point. Oh yeah, finally, just Aztec, because he's, at least in terms of like, I mean, the Reddit opinion, right? What people, general casual fans would know, a bit of a higher touted prospect than someone like Anson J, who even some of the casters were like, we didn't really have on our radar. How excited were you really to get somebody like that? And was he someone who went through the trials, and how did he stand out?
Yes, he was definitely someone who went through the trials.
Yeah.
You can basically expect that for every player. But there was something that became obvious to us very early, very quickly, is that we probably don't want Western flex support unless it's like Crimzo.
Yeah.
Because the difference, the mechanical difference between Western flex supports and Korean flex supports is insane.
Yeah.
Like Korean flex supports are actually much more mechanically gifted in general than Western flex supports are. There are some who would make sense. For example, Crimzo is probably one of the Westerners that makes the most sense for picking up in the flex support role.
Yeah.
But mainly it makes sense to just look to Korea and see who's available and who we would able to get there. And something about Aztec is that all we heard from like coaches and teammates is that he's very, very motivated, and that's something that always strikes us as very valuable, because you have to play a lot of Overwatch to be good and to be continuously good. Because if someone is just like seen as a good player but they don't play a lot anymore, then it doesn't necessarily make sense to pick them up, because their mechanical talent will drop over the season, over the year. So Aztec is someone who seems to be extremely motivated from all we know. And obviously he has a very good track record in contenders right now. He's probably, as far as I know, he's still going to play with WS in the Gauntlet. We told him that we are fine with that.
Yeah, which is cool. I'm looking forward to seeing. Yes. Hopefully, Anson J can as well. I'm so happy teams are doing that. I was so worried that the Gauntlet was going to be significantly more disappointing because all these talent would just be gone all of a sudden. I'm so happy that you get to see some of these players. Like, yeah, I'm excited for the Gauntlet.
Yes, we obviously want, if the players can have opportunities to play, then we want that, because if they stay hot, then that's perfect.
Yeah.
Because we will start boot camp and we will start trialing some sometime in January or something.
Mm-hmm.
So not before next year. It's going to be another month. So if you don't play Overwatch for like another month competitively at all, then that will affect you. So if they have the opportunity to play, amazing.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll see some of our players playing the Gauntlet as well, and that's something to look forward to, I think.
As a fan and analyst, I'm super excited to like watch those and talk about it. I mean, it might end up being a long off season. Who knows? So I mean, any content that I can talk about, the better, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, great little breakdown of the roster. One last question from us before we get into a couple of community questions.
So rapid fire those.
Yeah, gonna ask a little bit of too. What are your, I guess, performance expectations for the roster in this coming season? I want to frame this by saying, we kind of know it's a two-year plan. We know it's we're picking up people to grow, but I don't think Toronto Defiant has another season where they can perform super poorly without like having the fan base going an absolute riot.
Us included.
Us included. So I just kind of want to get a taste of where you guys roughly think you'll be for 2021. Like, hey, like, do you guys really truly think that you're a top 5 team overall? Do you guys think that you guys are more going to play in that 5 to 10? What are your guys' realistic assumptions?
I think the realistic assumptions right now is probably that we'll be somewhat in the middle field, or that we are hoping to somehow stand in the middle field. Obviously, the organization has expectations to make it as high as possible, and hopefully be able to participate in the playoffs. So that, I mean, we still don't really know what it all will look like.
The
next
playoffs will
season,
look
right?
like, yeah. Is that top 8? Is that top 8 NA? Is that top 8 global? Right? It could be.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what that looks like, but we hopefully will be able to maintain to be in the middle field at the very least, and depending on how well we get this team to gel together during the preseason, and then continue to stay stable
Yeah.
for the remainder of the season, we hopefully get to a point where we can perform consistently and be not as much of a up and down roller coaster team, and at the end somewhere near the bottom as in the previous 2 years.
Yeah. Because
there's one thing for sure is I genuinely don't know where anybody's going to be in this coming season.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are sort of expecting us to be in that like Florida Mayhem, Houston Outlaws, Atlanta Reign, Valiant sort of tier, and I think that's a pretty realistic expectation. Depending on who Florida signs, you can maybe argue they maybe get a little bit higher, but judging by the rosters we've seen so far, if we can hit that like 6, 7, 8 spot in NA, and again continue to improve, and then hopefully look forward to the next season, I think that would be okay. Like I think a top 3 is stretching it pretty thin, but
yes,
if you can like, oh, maybe Houston beats us in one meta, but we get him back, right? Or maybe we just beat him in all metas. I think that would be a pretty good spot to be in.
Yeah.
Yes.
All metas. I like that one. Okay. Hey, great way to round that out. Couple of community questions there. I know somebody was asking about what comms looked like, and we kind of asked that before.
Yeah,
this
that was
I think who came from Starboy. So shout out to him if you asked us.
It was on Discord.
On Discord. Are you guys planning on picking up one more person and leaving it there, or do you guys have a little bit of room in the budget for maybe another pickup mid-season?
Like, what's sort of the roster ideal size? Is it like an 8-person roster? I guess that's what it is now. Is it like a 9-person roster, or are you thinking more like 10 or 11, kind of?
It depends on who exactly we'll get as number 8, and then we'll have to think about if we want to get number 9.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really comment on that
Fair enough.
because it always depends on who exactly the player would be and what we want to do. But when it comes to like budget for like mid-season signings and stuff, ideally the team stays the same always, because it's always a huge disruption in the team if you get new players or new coaches or whatever changes, the good new GM, like whatever it is. You want to stay stable, and that means like in terms of in terms of who is working for you as well. You don't want to change things up during the season. It's very, very hurtful to the whole team and the whole environment. So that's only something that would really happen if we are very far down in terms of rankings.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can avoid that. But in theory, there's always room for that, and the org will always be open for making like tough decisions like that if we have to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Again, especially if you think about the 2021 contracts, if you can fire someone and basically don't have to pay them anymore, that means you suddenly have like this budget of their salary to get someone else in. So
yeah, exactly.
it becomes a lot easier for teams to switch people around, but you shouldn't be.
No one wants that.
You shouldn't be wanting to do that.
Exactly.
Yes.
No, I agree.
You shouldn't plan on doing that ever, because it will just be hurtful.
Well,
If
yeah,
you
like
plan on having
why trial somebody, sign somebody, bring them on, promote their social media is just to fire them, right? Like
if you plan on having a 7-man roster and then just and maybe you have like maybe you only have 2 DPS and then you think, okay, if May becomes meta, then we get a May player in our team. That doesn't work like that, right? If you do that, then the whole team environment will be complete shit. And even though it might be the best May player in the world, it won't help you because the team will not perform well because of psychology. Like
yeah, exactly. Hit the nail on the head there, not the hair, the head there. Next quick fire question. You were involved, I guess, with that EU and NA trials, correct?
Yes.
So what were some, I guess, T2 talent that I guess impressed you, but you guys didn't end up picking up? And this is by the Shed King of the
yeah, this is also Discord. He hit me up on Discord and said he wanted to ask this question because I think it is cool. I think there's a lot of good NA EU talent out there, and I mean some of them might end up in other teams. We don't have to speak of that, but just any people who really stood out to you.
Yeah, so some people who stood really out to me. I think someone who really did was Hardy, who's the main tank player. I thought he was very impressive. British Hurricane, exactly. I thought he was very impressive. I hope that he'll make Overwatch League. I think he deserves it. He's like someone who can become really good over the years.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that he's immediately like a top 2 tank player or something like that.
For sure.
But I think in the right environment he can be really good because he's a very dominant leader type person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something that can develop into something extremely, extremely good. Someone else who actually I was very impressed by, and that kind of surprised me as well, was Aspen, because she actually was like one of the best main supports that we had in our NAU trials, and I think she was really impressive in terms of not just mechanics but also communication.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if she'll get an opportunity for this next upcoming season, but I think she's someone who I can definitely see come into the league, and hopefully it will not be touted with like journalist shit about like she's only here because she's a woman or something like that. For sure. Because that to me is not true at all. She's actually I think on the verge of becoming really good and definitely good enough to be in the Overwatch League.
Yeah, so, it's funny that you brought her up as well, because I'd actually heard really good things through Richard, who obviously worked with her at Revival, right? When she was on there, he had nothing but great things to say about her. Obviously, the brand would be good, but you're right. I'd heard really good things in terms of her mechanics, and I've always respected people who I think that she maybe could have had a successful career streaming, right? When she was streaming before she joined Contenders, she was doing well, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because I obviously cover the Overwatch League. I love when it's the other way around, right? So many people retire from Overwatch League to go to streaming. I love the fact that she sort of put that aside because she really wanted to grind and make it to Overwatch League because of her mechanics, and I think that was really good. But sorry, Chris, you're going to say something.
No, I was just gonna say, on a tangent to that, esports is one of the only kind of, I guess, sport environments where you can actually bring together males and females and have them play on the same stage. Like, you're not gonna see that in football. That's not a thing. You're not gonna see that in hockey. But this is like one of those, platforms you can actually do that and have real good inclusion of women. So it's something that I'm really sitting on waiting for to breakthrough is for women to actually start kind of coming into the professional layer and competing side by side with guys. So just wanted to throw that tidbit in there.
Yeah, I really hope that she's continuing to be competitive, even if she doesn't get picked up in 2021. I think she has the potential to be in the Overwatch League at some point, and that would be very, very cool. I think.
I agree.
Great. So a couple more questions. Almost done here. So team building philosophy. I know we kind of touched on this already.
Yes.
But let's think on a more granular level. So when you're evaluating players, do you have, I guess, a set criteria of what you're looking for and what I guess criteria do you value more over others, if that is a thing? So just for example, like, do you value their personality over their mechanics more? Do you value, let's say, their team leadership or their communication skills versus something else? Like,
yeah. Do you value somebody more well-rounded versus like a specialist, for instance, right? Sort of things like that.
Yeah. So one big thing for 2021 again is flexibility.
Yeah.
Because of roster downsizing and budget downsizing throughout the whole league. It's something that every team looks for, flexibility. And obviously all the other things are part of it. It's like personality. How coachable are you? Like, what type of person are you? Are you able to make friends easily? Are you a teammate? Are you able to help people out? Like, this comes in. Then obviously mechanics. I don't think there's anything that you can definitively say is more important than something else. Like leadership, for example, it's not something that you can say definitively is more important than mechanics.
Yeah.
But for example, if you want your main tank to be the leader, if that's your culture in the team, if you want to create that, then maybe it is. Maybe it is more important. But in general, I think you can't really say there's something that's more than the other. It's about building a team that has like all of these things.
Yeah.
And make sure that all the players fill up those holes that you have somewhere, and basically make sure that in it all together it somehow fits. Like, it's a very complicated process because all the information you have from like talking to people or talking to players themselves is always not going to be perfect. You are always at the like an information loss at some point, to some degree.
Yeah.
So you want to know as much as possible. That's basically the off season is just a game of information. Like, who knows the most, and how can you use that information to get the best value team. And again, there's nothing that's like better than something else. It's just like you have to look at everything, and if there's like one of those aspects that you look up in a player and that's like really bad or like really good, then maybe that influences your decision. But just because something is really bad or just because something is really good out of all those things, you don't really want to make a decision because of this one thing, but because of how it all works out, and not just for this one player, but for the entire team, because you're looking to build a team and not just individuals.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And you know what? That question I asked, hard to boil it down to a single question.
Yeah.
It makes total sense. Last thing for you then. Last quick fire question. And you can cop out of this one too if you want. What are the responsibilities of each year coaching? Like, I guess, what do you do that's different than Glitch? And I guess KDG too, or do you guys kind of all share the pot?
Yeah, and that was TJ on Discord that asked us that one too.
Yeah, TJ, yes.
Yeah, that's something that we are that we are currently talking about, because we have to figure out the structure for the coaching stuff and then how to boil that down to the players. And that's something that isn't definitively defined yet, but that's something that we'll figure out in the next few weeks before bootcamp. Then try to test it in the bootcamp, maybe swap things around and see how things work out. But in theory, the one thing that is definite is that KDG will be the leader, the head coach, and then he's going to basically be the head of whatever decision is being made, and we are trying to communicate whatever he thinks should be done to all the players that he doesn't talk to. So that is the one thing that I can say we are doing.
Yeah.
What exactly everyone is doing and how it's different, that we will have to see, and maybe I can answer that in like a couple of weeks or
Cool.
months.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. So those are the community questions. Bro, I just wanted to say thanks for coming on again and answering our questions. I know it's been a bit of a long one, but it's been super, super insightful. I was going to say, this at the end of the episode, you always sort of have the floor to maybe give yourself a shout out, your social medias, but also any final thoughts to anybody who's really listening out here who, that you want to give.
Well, definitely shout out to my Twitter. You can follow me. I create drama once a year, so just don't unfollow and you're good.
Yeah.
And I think just a big shout out to the org for just getting a coach, getting a new head coach in KDG. It's really exciting. I think it's very new to work with someone like him because his personality type isn't something that I've seen before in the head coaches that I've worked with. So it's very interesting, and I'll have to see where exactly I'll be able to fit in and how we all work together. I think it's going to be extremely exciting, and I'm looking forward to that. But also shout out to the fans, because I think that's the one thing that Toronto has had for them for the last 2 years. So the fans have been with us for this entire time, and I think it's very impressive in the way that fans communicate with our team and with our players compared to other teams and other players. So I'm very thankful for the community that we have and for the culture that everyone in the community creates, and that includes you guys as well. It's very nice to see that we can have something like a friendly discussion, and there's not just going to be hurtful comments written at players all the time.
Yeah, we're Canadian. What can we say?
That's what happens. That's what happens when you're born and raised. But again, thanks so much to come on. Really appreciate it. I think it was a great episode. I'm hoping you guys have success. Again, I'm not gonna sit here and bash if we don't bring home a championship next season, but if we're competitive, I think we're gonna be happy and in that upper echelon of teams. Chris, how about you? Any final thoughts?
No, hey, shout out to the fans for staying as long as they have, but also shout out to you. You're the lifer. You're the lifer here, Dennis. You've been here since the start.
I'm the last one. I'm the last one.
The last OG player, and then I think Logix is the only other one who played. He wasn't the original Toronto Defiant, but he did play in the original season.
He came in season 2,
mid-season, so
I'm the last one to start, and I'm just waiting to see when I'll go.
Don't even say it, Barroi.
You never know.
2-year plan, baby. 2-year plan.
2-year plan.
Full time, Roy. Maybe you go and
all time.
It's like three championships in a row.
Huh? Yeah, exactly. The Shock think they're gonna get a 3-peat. Please. Thank you so much. As always, thank you for everyone who supported us and watched this video. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and we'll put your information in the description below. As always, guys, thank you for watching.
Thanks.